Welcome back to another episode, everyone. Chris Lopez here, and Jenny Bayless is on the line with me, and she's going to walk us through a deal analysis of helping a client buy their first rental property down in the Springs. Jenny, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Chris?
I'm doing great. I always love deal analyses, and this is one that you put together, or that you put the pieces together. And I'm always excited to hear about the numbers in the Springs market, and also this is your client's first rental property, which always is fun to help people kind of like get into the investing world as well. So I'm very curious to hear about both of these aspects. So
Yeah,
yeah, so and this is one I think what you just closed on a few weeks ago, right?
that's right. And it's already rented out to kind of give everyone a sneak peek as to how hot everything is down here.
All right. So set us up. Like, what's the overview? Like, give us the client profile. Who are they and why are they getting into real estate?
Yeah, so I think what makes this deal even more exciting, you mentioned this is a couple, it's a young couple. They want to get started into real estate for retirement, but not only is it their first rental property, it's actually their first real estate purchase. So I think that's extra exciting to be able to be a part of someone's first real estate transaction. And we found this deal on the MLS, and it was a townhome, and it was pretty straightforward. So we'll go into more of the details.
All right.
So I like this property because of its proximity. It's really close to several military bases, and the particular region that they purchased in is actually set to receive, I think it was a $36 million redevelopment effort in the next couple of years. So that is always a positive sign, in my opinion, for values and upward mobility to come in that regard. But to kind of go into the property itself, it is a townhome. It was 2 bed, 2.5 bath. It was listed for 185,000, and we were able to secure it for 190,000. And it was move-in ready, new appliances, new paint. I think someone had gone in and flipped it actually, so that's kind of where everything stood on that.
And was this a multiple offer situation?
It was a
Okay.
multiple offer situation, and we were actually not the highest, but they felt the most confident in our lending. So that is really what secured the deal for us. So we were really happy about that. And just kind of going into how we landed on this property.
No, back up there because you
Yeah.
you glossed over that, and that's a very important nuanced point. And I mean, it's this is not the first time we've won properties like this. So
Mhm.
talk about this in a little more detail as much as you can. So we weren't the highest offer,
Yep.
but we were the overall most attractive offer, right?
Correct. So this property had actually fallen out previously with a different buyer due to financing, was my understanding. So the seller was very sensitive to the deal closing, essentially. So our package, I guess, gave them the confidence that we were going to be able to close when we said we were going to, and we pushed things up to make it even more appealing, knowing that this property had fallen out of contract. So we did a 3-week close, rush appraisal, all that good stuff to make it more competitive. And yeah, they told us that we were not the highest, but they had the most confidence in us.
And so, I mean, so from the seller's perspective, I want to kind of talk about the other side of the coin because, like I said, this is not the first time and probably won't be the last time we've gotten offers, one like this, is because, and this is why we do so much prep work up front, and we really do, our job in building some great partners with lenders and things like that, because, a lot of people just look at purchase price for the offer on there, and there's so much more to it, especially now during COVID. It's the ability of the buyer to perform. A lot of times the lender, they've always been important, but they've actually, I think, gone up a few notches in the level of importance post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we've talked about this on some other podcasts, Jenny, is just a lot of times lenders, they're not able to get the loan to the finish line. And that's why lenders, we recommend they have a very good track record, and they've been able to do it. So it makes us have a very good package to send over, or a very good
Yeah,
contract to send, makes it a very well-rounded package.
exactly. And it just gives people more of a sense of ease and the ability that we will close and we will do what we say we are going to do per the contract. So I think that's really important. And then speaking of loans, going over some of the components of that, something you and I were mentioning that is pretty interesting is that these buyers, they were able to do a 15% down conventional mortgage on this property because it was a townhome. So I think that's pretty attractive for investors that want to preserve a little bit more capital.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I've talked to these clients, and I happen to be because they were using Joe for the loan. They have to be in the office meeting with him to go over the options. I remember they looked at 15, 20 versus 25% down. I happen to poke my head in just to say hi real fast right when they're doing it, so I end up chatting with them for a few minutes about it. And I think it's always, I think it's a really fun exercise, and it's something that you and I geek out on, Jenny, is that when you do go under contract to get the final lending numbers to say, hey, here's the options here, and they weigh the difference of 15 versus 20 versus 25%, because at 15%, you're putting less money down, but they are going to be paying some mortgage insurance because you're below that 20% threshold. And sometimes, depending on interest rates, you're going to see a higher interest rate than if you have a 20 or 25% down. So they're able to get all three options from Joe. He had, 1, 2, 3 printed out, look through it all and all that. And based off the amount of, cash, minimizing the cash they could put down, keep more cash in the bank. And I think the difference in the monthly payment, I would say, was like less than $100. It was, I can't remember the exact amount, but it was pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Like, hey, I'd rather keep an extra chunk of cash in the bank and pay extra few dollars a month. And they ended up going to 15% down, which I kept my mouth shut, but that's what I would have gone with too, because to me, that made the most sense. So this is one of the fun things about the investment properties is financing, is you get some different levers to pull.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I totally agree with their train of thought as to, like you said, it's a couple of dollars more a month, but you have that extra padding in the bank. And I think that's what is really important, especially, when times are a little interesting, such as now. Yeah. So going over using Joe's spreadsheet, plugged in the components of the deal. And so, as I mentioned, 15% down, and they're going to do monthly paid PMI. We bought the property for $190,000, and I went through, and it looked like their acquisition costs were about $6,500 in addition to the $1,500 in loan costs. And we didn't have any seller credits and minimal repair costs. I think, maybe they cleaned, I think, and that was about it. So not even worth notating down here. But they were able to secure an interest rate of 3.625 on 15% down on an investment property, which is awesome.
Great?
Yeah, that's so cool. I was really happy for them that they were able to do that. And then they have a tenant in there already, and that tenant is paying $1,300 a month. So even though we've accounted for vacancy, it was really very minimal. I think it was a week that the property was vacant. So nothing to worry about.
What was the pro forma rent? Because the actual was 1,300. What were you guys pro forming?
We got 1,300.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. And the market definitely dictated it. They had a lot of interest in the property. So yeah, I think 1,300 is appropriate. And then, so one aspect that I do want to highlight is that they are self-managing. So I think that it's important to mention that. And we're only going to budget about 5% for maintenance because the HOA takes care of the exterior of the townhome, and it looked to be in really good condition on the interior. So we thought that 5% was probably appropriate for that. And they do have an HOA due monthly, which is $206 a month.
And so is that, cover kind of standard stuff, or is it any quirks about the HOA?
Yeah, it was kind of hefty. It did make us pause a little bit, because it really only covered like landscaping, siding, that sort of gutters, that sort of thing. We thought it was a little high because it didn't really cover utilities. I don't even believe it covered trash. So, so we were kind of surprised by that. But after looking at it as a whole, it was still worth it for my clients to proceed with it. It was still a really good property for sure.
So this is a totally random question, but if they don't cover trash, are there like the common dumpsters, or does everyone have their own trash can?
I believe everyone has their own trash can, if I remember correctly, because
Okay.
I asked them the same thing. I said, I'm sure there's a community dumpster. And they're like, nope, we didn't see one. Oh, okay. That's interesting. So yeah, Colorado Springs, I know, is a little bit different than Denver, where we have to hire our own trash service monthly. Whereas I believe in Denver, it's included in your property taxes, right?
Yeah, in Denver County it is. The other counties in the metro area, they're all just third-party services, waste management and those companies. But Denver County, that's just part of the property taxes.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. So because it's essentially a single family home, the tenant is
Yeah.
responsible. So, really not a big deal for our landlords here.
What about water and sewer? Is that in the HOA? Do you recall?
No, it's not. So that's on the tenant also.
Huh. And so all the townhomes are separately metered?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty common for townhomes.
Okay.
Separately metered water and sewer is not common for multifamily, where one owner per building.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then some other expenses to take note of. Property taxes are $550 a year, and insurance costs are $300 a year, and that's actually rounding up. So pretty low costs otherwise, in my opinion. And so going on to the rental analysis, so they're looking at about a $1,500 annual cash flow before taxes. And so again, that's self-managing. So it's a little bit helped by that aspect. But they're still looking at a cap rate of 5.8%, which in my opinion, in buying a property that is very nicely done, very nicely finished, turnkey. All they needed to do was find a qualified tenant, and they're getting a 5.8% return. I would consider that a win for sure. And because they were able to put only 15% down, their return on investment quadrant, if we are taking into account appreciation, cash flow, debt pay down, and depreciation, it's a 41.6% return on their
Wow.
initial investment. So that is awesome.
Yeah, that's gotta love leverage.
Yes.
So basically, I'm kind of looking at the numbers here. So if they did use a property manager, they would probably be right around a neutral cash flow. Assuming property
Yeah.
manages about 1 month's worth of rent. So subtract
Mhm.
1,300 from there. So I mean, even still for 15% down, turnkey place in a good part of town. I mean, that's a great deal with property management as well.
Yeah, I
Just park your
agree.
money and let go. I mean, I like those plays right now.
Yep, I agree with that, and I think it's a really great first property for them for sure.
Awesome. And what was their total initial investment? Can you go back one slide or two slides?
Yeah,
I want to see this because this is something that's I forgot to talk about. So so for all in, they were about $36,000 all in.
yeah,
So for a good property like that, that's a very good deal.
yeah, and we were budgeting conservative appreciation rates. So again, the return on investment quadrant, that's showing about a $15,000 return by the time you account for all the benefits that real estate offers. So 15,000 on $36,000 initial investment. I would take that for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Awesome. And I forgot to mention, that of course these numbers are plugged into the rental spreadsheet we use from Joe Massey. the screenshots are available on the show notes. Just click on the show notes, you can view them, or you can always email Jenny for the full copy of the spreadsheet and get more details. Anything else, Jenny, you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that is pretty straightforward. These deals, they do come along pretty, I wouldn't say frequently, but they're not rare. So we can certainly, look for this similar type of deal for anyone who might be interested.
Cool. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions or interest, reach out to Jenny. I mean, she's great at finding deals, analyzing them, and putting together. So definitely reach out to Jenny with any questions you have. Jenny, thanks you. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.